Classics to read aloud to your children. The Ugly Duckling by Hans Christian Andersen. A pleasant old farmhouse stood close by a river, and from the house down to the bank of the river there grew great burdock leaves. These were so high that a child could stand under the tallest, and they grew so close together that they looked like a little forest. In a snug place under one of these burdock leaves, a duck sat on her nest waiting for her young brood to hatch. She was becoming very tired, for the little ones were a long time in coming out of their shells, and she did not often have company. The neighbor ducks liked better to swim about in the river than to climb its slippery banks and sit under the burdocks gossiping. After a while, one shell cracked, then another and another, and from each egg came a fluffy little yellow creature that lifted its head and cried, "Peep, peep." "Quack, quack," said the mother, and then they all quacked as well as they could. After a little while, they came out from under their mother's wings and looked about them. "What a great world this is," said the young ducks, "so very much larger than the eggshell." "Do you really think that this is the whole world?" asked their mother. "Wait until you have seen the farmyard, the garden, and the pasture." "Are you all out?" you may ask. No, I declare the largest egg lies there still. "I wonder how much longer I can stay here. I am very tired of this," she said as she sat down again on the nest. "Well then, how are you getting along?" asked an old duck who called. "Very well," said the mother. "All the eggs are hatched but one, and aren't these little ones the prettiest ducklings you ever saw?" "They are very pretty," said the visitor, "but just let me see that egg that will not hatch. It must be a turkey's egg. I hatched some once, and after all my care and trouble, the young ones were afraid of the water. I quacked and coaxed, but it did no good. I never could get one of them into the water. Yes, that is a turkey's egg. Now, if I were in your place, I would leave it where it is and teach the other children to swim." "I think I will sit on it a little while longer," said the duck. "I have been here so long that a few days more will not matter." "Well, do as you please," said the old duck, and she waddled away. At last the large egg broke, and the young one crept out crying, "Peep, peep." The mother duck stared at it and said, "What a large duckling! And it is not at all like the others. I wonder if it really is a turkey. We shall soon find out when we go into the water. It shall go in, if I have to push it in myself." On the next day, the sun shone brightly on the burdock leaves, so the mother took her brood and waddled off to the river. When they came to the water, the mother duck jumped in with a splash. "Quack, quack," she cried, and one after another the little ducklings jumped in after their mother. They swam about quite prettily, with their legs paddling under them as though they had been born in the water, and the ugly brother was there with the others. "Oh," said the surprised mother, "that is not a turkey. How well he uses his legs and how gracefully he holds his body. He is my own child, and I do not think he is very ugly. Quack, quack. Come with me now, children. I will take you to a place where there are many fine people, but you must keep close to me or you may be stepped on, and above all, look out for the cat." Then they climbed the slippery bank of the river and waddled after their mother. When they came to the farmyard fence, the mother stopped and said, "Come now, my children, see how well you can behave. Don't turn in your toes. A duckling who is well brought up spreads his feet wide apart just as his mother does. So, do you see? Now bend your necks and say quack," and the young ducks did just that as their mother told them to do so. An old duck who saw the new brood coming stared at them and said, "Do look, here is another brood, as if there were not enough of us already. And what a queer-looking fellow one of them is. We do not want him here." And then she flew at him and bit him in the neck. "Let him alone," said the mother. "He is doing no harm." "Yes, but he is so big and ugly that he must be turned out," said the hateful duck. A very grand old duck said, "They are very pretty children, all but that one. I wish his mother would fix him up a little." "I cannot do that," said the mother. "He is not pretty, but he is kind and good and swims even better than the others. I think he will become pretty." And then she stroked his neck and smoothed his feathers. The little ducks made themselves at home in the farmyard, but the poor ugly duckling had not 1 minute's peace. The turkey gobbler puffed himself out and flew at the poor little duckling, and became very red in the head with anger. The ducks pecked at him, the children chased him, and the girl who fed the poultry kicked him. Even his brothers and sisters were unkind to him, and would say, "Oh, you ugly creature, I wish the cat would get to you." Even his mother said, "I wish he had never come out from the shell." At last, he could endure it no longer, so he ran away, frightening the little birds in the hedge as he flew over it. "They are afraid of me because I am so ugly," he said. Then he closed his eyes and ran on until he came to a swamp where the wild geese lived. He stayed there all night, feeling very tired and sad. In the morning, 2 wild geese flew over him. When they saw him, they began to make fun of him. Just then, pop, pop, went a gun, and the 2 fell dead among the rushes, coloring the water with their blood. Pop, 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 pop was heard all around, and whole flocks of birds and wild geese flew up from the rushes. The blue smoke from the guns rose like a dark cloud over the trees, and a number of dogs bounded in among the rushes. How frightened the poor duckling was! He turned away his head to hide it under his wing when a large, terrible dog passed quite near him. The dog's mouth was open, his tongue hung from his mouth, and his eyes looked very fierce. He thrust his nose close to the duckling, showing his sharp teeth, and then, splash, splash, he went into the water without touching him. "How glad I am that I am so ugly. Even a dog will not bite me," said the duckling. So he lay quite still while the shot rattled through the rushes, as gun after gun was fired over him. It was late in the day before it became quiet, and then the poor young thing did not dare to move. He waited quietly for several hours, and after looking carefully around him, he flew away from the swamp as fast as he could go. The next morning, just as the sun arose, he came to a stream of water. Here he could swim and dive, but all the animals kept away from him. He was so ugly, so he was very lonely. Autumn came, and the leaves in the forest turned to orange, red, and gold, and then as winter drew near, the wind caught them and whirled them in the cold air. The weather grew colder and colder. Winter was here, and the poor duck had to swim about in the water to keep from freezing, but each night the place on which he swam became smaller. After a while, he grew weak and tired, and lay still and helpless, frozen fast in the ice. Early in the morning, a farmer who was passing saw what had happened. He broke the ice in pieces and carried the duck home to his wife. The poor creature felt better after getting warm, but when the children wanted to play with him, the duckling thought they were going to hurt him, so he started up, frightened, fluttered into the milk pan, and splashed the milk about the room. Then the woman clapped her hands, which frightened him still more. He flew first into the jar of butter, and then into the flour barrel and out again. What a bad fix he was in! The woman screamed and struck at him with his poker, and the children laughed and screamed and tumbled over each other trying to catch him, but finally he got away. The door was open a little way, and he slipped out and flew down among some bushes. Here he lay, tired out in the newly fallen snow. After he had rested himself, he flew to a swamp, where all winter long he suffered from hunger and cold. When winter had passed and he was lying one morning among the rushes, he felt that his wings were strong, so he flapped them against his sides and rose high into the air. They carried him on and on until he found himself in a large garden. Everything was beautiful there. From the bushes close by swam 3 white swans, rustling their feathers as they moved over the smooth water. I will fly to these birds, he said, and they will kill me because I am so ugly and dare to come near them, but it makes no difference. It is better to be killed by these beautiful birds than to be pecked by the ducks, chased by the hens, kicked about by the girl who feeds the poultry, or starved and frozen in the winter. Then he flew to the water and swam towards the fine swans. The moment they saw him, they hurried to meet him with outstretched wings. "Kill me," said the poor bird, and he bent down his head, waiting for them to take his life. But what do you think he saw as he looked down into the water? His own likeness, but how changed! He was no longer a dark gray bird, ugly to look at, but a beautiful swan. The other swans swam around the newcomer and stroked his neck with their beaks. Soon after, some little children came into the garden and threw bread and cake into the water. "Oh, look!" cried the youngest child. "There's a new one!" How happy they all were to see the new swan. They ran to call their father and mother to come and see him. Then they threw bread and cake into the water for the new bird, and they said, "This is the finest of all. He is so young and graceful." The poor swan was so happy he did not know what to do, but he was not at all proud. He had been hated for being ugly, and now he heard them say he was the most beautiful of all the birds. He rustled his feathers and curved his slender neck and said, "Now, when people see me, they will not be angry, they will be glad. I never dreamed of such happiness when I was an ugly duckling."